money matters. Money talks. And if your team does not see certain things getting funded, then that innovation becomes episodic or it just becomes performative. And nothing can really happen without a budget.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your no-fluff guide to artificial intelligence in higher ed. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing nearly 20 years of ed tech and marketing expertise straight to your earbuds. Higher ed leaders are expected to master AI overnight, but let's be real, no one has time to sift through every headline, hot take, or research report. That's why every Monday, I'll break down what actually matters, fast, clear, and to the point. Want to sound like the smartest person in the room at your next team meeting? You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. So you want to hire an AI consultant. Cool. Have you written the charge, picked your co-chair, aligned your faculty work with your cabinet, drafted a 5-phase scope that doesn't make your CIO twitch? No, not yet. Well, good news. That's today's episode, and I am joined by Dr. Ed Cabellon, Interim VP for Student Experience at Frederick Community College. Ed has spent his career at the intersection of student affairs, technology, and institutional leadership, and he's built a national reputation for thinking clearly about how digital tools change the work of higher ed without losing sight of the humans inside it. At FCC, he co-chairs the AI Leadership Steering Group with the CIO, where he's leading the institution's enterprise AI roadmap effort. He was last on the show almost exactly a year ago, talking to me about the rise of the AI teammate, and a lot has happened in the last 12 months. Ed, welcome back to the Pulse.
Thanks, Mallory. So happy to be here. It's great to see you.
It is always so good to see you, Ed. And hey, I was scrolling on Instagram last night and I told you right before we clicked record, I got to see some beautiful photos of your youngest heading off to prom. I mean, hello, girl dad vibes. Like, you must be so proud.
'Tis the season. It's prom season. It's graduation season. And yeah, it's hard to believe I'm in this season of life. I think folks listening who are in this season with, young adult children, sandwich generation, if you will, where you're seeing your kids grow up, but then also caring for, parents and other folks. So yeah, it's a season of gratitude for sure, Mallory.
That's amazing. And your youngest is off to college this fall. Is that right?
She is. We're so excited. She's selected Dean College in Franklin, Massachusetts
nice.
to pursue her BFA in musical theater.
Let's go.
And, I mean, you and I have a love of, we share this love, and she is killing it right now. As we record this, she's getting ready. It's Tech Week at Brockton High School in Massachusetts, where they're performing the spring musical Chicago Teen Edition, and she's playing the role of Roxy Hart, which we're just so thrilled for her and for her classmates. It's going to be a wonderful weekend of celebration of seeing theater 3 nights in a row in Brockton and celebrating my birthday at the same time. So it's going to be a wonderful weekend coming up.
Oh, we are just celebrating all the things. Chicago was the first show I ever saw when I was, I think I was in middle school maybe, but it was the very first. So it's near and dear to my heart. I mean, Roxy Hart is an excellent role for a high schooler. That's so fun. All right. Well, as much as I would love to sit here and, discuss all things Chicago, we're here to talk about AI. And, I think when we are bringing in outside help to support our institutional needs, announcing who the consultant is the easy part, but all the work that comes before it can be brutal at best. I think, and I had the pleasure of seeing it, Frederick Community College sent out an RFQ. Ed and his CIO co-chair spent months doing the part that nobody's publishing. They stood up an enterprise level AI leadership steering group. They reckoned with faculty-led Gen AI work that already existed and had its own momentum. And they wrote a charge. They had to pick a framework and they had to sequence it over 12 months and 5 phases: discovery, risk and readiness, signature project selection, roadmap development, and change leadership. That sequencing's the move. Like, most campuses run this backwards, and they green light a flashy pilot and then maybe give it a little headline and try and retrofit some governance after the fact. Or the campus lets AI live inside of just a single division, and then leaders act surprised when others wind up standing up their own shadow strategies 6 months later. Ed's project is different. Ed's project scope reads like someone who has seen that movie or Chicago musical and said, I'm not Roxy Hart today. The language is deliberate. It is tool agnostic, advisory, not operational, options and trade-offs, not a prescriptive path. And every word in the RFQ is doing work, protecting the institution from a consultant who might flatten the nuance, and protecting the cabinet from a roadmap that ignores the people who actually have to live with what gets produced. So this conversation with Ed is about the months of work that you don't see, the internal alignment that's necessary, the political calls that's required, the scope writing, and the moment a leader like Ed decides outside help is the right next move. So Ed, take me months and months and months ago back to the conversation where maybe all of this stopped being a working group chat at Frederick and became a steering group conversation. Like, who was in the room and what got said that actually like built some momentum around this?
Sure. Great question. And I think for framing for the audience, I'm still in my first year of my contract of my 2-year agreement with Frederick. And I joined last June, and there was also a new CIO joining. And so, like dating, Mallory, you need 2 things: chemistry and timing.
Yes.
And so as I arrived with Jerry DeSanto, Dr. Jerry DeSanto, our CIO, conversations at cabinet were surfacing around the college's use of AI and looking at the work that the faculty had completed the previous year. And so, like any new environment that I try to enter, I try to listen first. I try to see and read what actually has happened, where momentum is, and how might we stand up work on the shoulders of that work that was done before. And so who was in the room? Initially, it was cabinet members chatting about where to go. I think there was, obviously, when you look at this year's review of educational development opportunities, AI continued to drive many of our associations' AI-related conversations. And so it was on all of our minds of what to do next. And we agreed that the work that we were doing with faculty needed to be at the center, because as co-collaborators of this work, their insight into classroom use of AI would be the starting point, as I think most institutions begin. Mm-hmm. But what was clear and evident, Mallory, is that concurrently happening with that was administration and students' use of AI with no guidance. And so when we sat in a room and said, where do we go from here? The decision was framed around, how do you build on this work? And how do you create the next phase of the work through the right mix of people across the college, so it becomes an enterprise approach and not a faculty approach, not a student affairs approach. And given my background in technology and digital leadership with my research and what I've done in the past, the cabinet felt comfortable with myself and Jerry co-chairing this, and making sure that we continue to keep folks in the loop on our progress. And so we formed the group first and decided to move forward in that way.
So besides the 2 of you, who else is in the steering committee? Like, roles are fine, not names. Yeah.
Yeah. So our chief security officer in IT is on the group. We have my enrollment services AVP is on the group, and that chief security officer is an AVP. The chairs of the faculty subgroup from the AI academic affairs group, they were carried over. So there was continuation of that group. We hit a point where we acknowledged the work that the group did. They had recommendations for us to chew on, and we took that as the grounding of our next phase of this work. And so those faculty chairs also came over. We included someone from HR to make sure that we are looking at it from the employee lens. And the piece that's missing right now, or I think our future opportunities, is figuring out student voice in the process, because we want to ensure that we're not just doing this work in a vacuum. And I understand the metaphor of building the plane as we fly it, as we do with a lot of things in higher education.
Yeah.
So I think it's giving ourselves grace, knowing that we want them part of the process, but we want to give them something to look at, to review before we bring them into the administrative, if you will, of how the donuts are made.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's really a nice cross-collaborational group that you have. And I'm sure if folks are listening, like trying to playbook this out for their own institution, that list of roles is going to be really helpful. So thank you for running down them. I got to ask you though about the experience of co-chairing something like this, right? This is an initiative at the largest scale, and everything we've been talking about, like, it sounds very collaborative on paper, or on a podcast, right? But in practice, sometimes just having two co-chairs, like there's inherently going to be friction there. Like at some point, someone has to lose an argument. And so I'm curious, like when you and Jerry, do have conflict or disagreements, has that has that happened yet, first of all? And if so, like, how do you work through that, not losing the collaboration, but knowing that like someone might need to compromise?
It's a great question, because the co-chair model absolutely could go in that direction. I'm happy to say that, and maybe it's because our honeymoon glasses are still on, Jerry and I have been in sync the entire process.
That's great.
And I think it's because, Mallory, we had our North Star set up from the beginning. I think we knew that, the end state we were trying to get to, or the vision state we were trying to get to, was to create this AI roadmap for the college. And understanding that the how, we could talk about sequencing, who should be in the room, the scope. But if we ever were to get to that situation where the two of us had fundamentally different ideals or approaches, we'd want to bring in other people to check us, to say, look, this is where we're having some barriers or some blockages. Can you help us unpack this and look at it differently? I'm proud to say that our cabinet is very collaborative. We work together really well as the key folks who would have the operational execution of any AI roadmap. We ask them a lot of questions to make sure that we are aligned. And I don't think we live in a Pollyanna state where we're always going to agree, but I think having that North Star clear at the beginning, I think could reduce those things coming into play. So that's what I would offer, because at the end of the day, our structure was built to handle any disagreements and not avoid it. We really want to be, as I say, clarity is kindness, and where we can be clear and have candid conversations. I think that's the role of leadership, Mallory, in these situations.
Yeah. So we're playbooking this out, right? You've got the steering committee with the right roles, the right people in the room. You've got a clear North Star and buy-in from those right people in the right room. But a lot's got to happen between that and, emailing some potential consultants an RFQ. So what comes next? How frequently are you meeting? And what's the decision-making power of this steering committee in the time span before you actually bring a consultant in the room?
So we spent about 6 months prepping for the recommendation to the college to move forward, not only with the scope of work that the AI leadership steering group would take on, the time frame by which we were going to operate under, but also what would that scope of work for a consultant be? Mm-hmm. Because we didn't want to bring on a consultant for a consultant's sake. We needed it to be a multiplier, an activator, someone who could help us stay organized, and to be a thought partner, Mallory, because there's so much happening across the academy right now with AI. We needed someone to check us to say, that sounds right in the sequence you've identified, or yep, you may want to think about the risks involved with doing it that way with your specific technology enterprise solutions that you have, because not every college runs the same tech. And mm-hmm, what we've learned as part of the process is that it's actually more important for you to have your data clean and operational, as opposed to desperate and all over the place before executing any AI roadmap. And so that's the real work that has to happen before we move forward into implementation of a roadmap, because we have to make sure that what we're standing it up on, it being AI, has a strong foundation. Because I've seen too often people rush to implementing a policy, a procedure related to AI, but not addressing the underlying systems and data that AI would be leaning on to support whatever the needs of the institution. So we can't do everything at once, but what we've really focused on this year at Frederick is making sure that our data is stronger, our definitions are coming in across the college in a way that's easy to talk about and easy to ask questions about. We're bringing a data warehouse on this summer with our friends in IR. And so everything's just been really, I mean, we've been blessed with timing. I mean, really timing in terms of this work getting put together.
That's awesome. And one more time for the people who tune in and out because they're driving, clean your data. Data. All right. Somebody's figured it out now. Even if they're at the red light. Data.
Sure. Yeah.
I keep yelling it.
So important.
So walk me through the conversation with the president, right? So the steering committee's landed on the recommendation that, hey, it's going to make sense to bring a consultant into Frederick to help us through this. Was it hard making the case for spending real money on a consultant when, you know, maybe the president thinks, well, you have a steering committee now, like, can't you do this yourself?
When we had the conversation with the president, a lot of the focus was on current staff workload and the trade-offs for adding this to the steering group's capacity. Having no one at the college that really had that expertise per se holistically in AI. I think many folks have been tinkering, learning, and doing those fringe AI pieces, but no one at the campus really had the expertise. We had the mindset in terms of why it was important, and President Cheek was supportive of the direction we were going from the beginning, recognizing the opportunity as well as the impact it would have to do so. And when we laid out the scope of work, Mallory, that was developed collaboratively with our colleagues, and we thought about, well, what's the trade-off of doing it internally and bringing in someone externally? It was around speed, and it was around the impact that we would have. And so could we do it internally? Probably, but it would probably be clunky. It would probably be not as efficient. But having a consultant helps us stay focused in a time where our attention is being grabbed all over the place for a multitude of priorities that an institution might have. And if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And so the investment of a consultant in this signals to the college and to the community that we see this as an important strategic priority for us. We're going to do a 12-month focused scope of work with someone to come in and help us get our stuff together. And then we'll be able to, once we move forward with recommendations, that external consultants' feedback and thought partnership, I think will create even more strength in the confidence in what we're doing moving forward. And it's not just a group of folks that, while well-intended, may not have that content expertise. We needed that to strengthen the validity of the direction we want to go in.
All right. Well, now if we're back to our playbook and we're checking off the boxes, we've got the committee. We're running our, data cleanup projects in parallel. The president's bought in. We've got a real budget for this thing. Now it's maybe time to go back to the Gen AI committee and say, hey, you guys did some real work. Thank you for this. Like you've already said, Ed, it is the foundation of what all of this is being built on. But you also said a key word a few minutes ago, trade-offs, right? Because if something goes in an RFQ, that certainly means something doesn't go in an RFQ. So let's take this in two parts. Like, first of all, how did the conversations with the faculty members who, kind of spearheaded that Gen AI committee go? Was there any friction? Like, of course, you have to manage politics. Like, you can't make it feel like a takeover. And then what were the initial steps to drafting this RFQ?
So the conversations went really positively, in part, Mallory, because faculty were asking for direction and support for the recommendations that they had put together. And the college in the fall was still pulling together what it was going to do. So they were looking for leadership. They were looking for, well, what is the next step? You asked us to do the scope of work. Now what? As you might imagine, at many institutions, folks are asked to do scopes of work in committees only for the work to be sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Yes.
And
Never sees the light of day.
Never sees the light of day. The digital shelf of all the things that we said we were going to do, but never did. And so there was an appetite for advancing the work, and they were looking for cabinet level leadership because of the importance of it. It's one thing, Mallory, to have that scope of work sit with faculty. And while that's important, if we really want to have the enterprise-wide impact, it's got to include a larger scope of folks. And so when we're looking at some of the initial impacts, it's really around governance. It's really looking at how to create that policy and procedure that the college will move forward with in the fall, as well as things like how to purchase stuff. And are we going to select an enterprise-wide tool? Are we going to lead into Microsoft Copilot more? And what does the training look like? And so those questions are now front and center, and something we're going to take action on as we build momentum towards the development of the roadmap, the adoption of the Achieving the Dream ATD framework that we're using as our North Star to create the roadmap. It's just that momentum. And again, we're not starting from scratch. We're using the great work that our faculty put together last year. And so doing it that way, I think will create more buy-in as we move forward. It's going to be interesting how we provide training, set expectations, the accountability structures for how we make sure that we're using it ethically and responsibly. Those are all great community-wide conversations we're looking forward to having in the fall. And we meet monthly. I think it was 1 year. We meet monthly. That's our cadence. I forgot to mention that. Sorry.
No, you're good. I've been throwing like 4 questions at you at a time. So no, it's so, there's just so much to talk about. And I think that, I think there's a lot of institutions who probably feel like if they didn't start this process 2.5 years ago, that they're behind and it's been, like that they can't catch up or whatever. And like, this is such a great example of like, you are not behind, like, and even your own scope of work lays out a very clear phased approach over the course of 12 months. And I have to assume that's because you looked at the workloads of the current team members and you were very thoughtful about what is realistic, and prevents this from just being another thing that winds up sitting on that digital shelf. So I want to talk through how you identified your 5 phases. So for listeners, a reminder: discovery, risk and readiness, signature project selection, roadmap development, and then change leadership. And I have to imagine there was intentionality behind that sequencing, particularly the signature project selection. I'm very interested in hearing more about that one, Ed.
So when we looked at the way forward, Mallory, the group really wanted to be intentional from a change management lens. We wanted to make sure that folks didn't see this as another thing we were doing, but that it was building on the work and that we were moving forward with intention. And the intention around the design of our scope of work was really to, again, make sure that we were highlighting the things that were done. We were looking at what the deliverables are going to be at the end of this so that people could see and that we could hold ourselves accountable to that. But to your question around project development, we know that part of the excitement around AI is to create sandboxes and to incentivize faculty, staff, and student engagement with AI in a safe space and in ways that reward innovation. And so this next fiscal year, the college has set aside funds for folks to submit a pilot, AI pilot, to kick the tires on. And the goal is to make sure that folks feel like, and this may not be the way, but I'll use this framing, that we've been given permission to use AI.
Yes.
That we are not only given permission, but encouraged to use AI. And we want you to think broadly and deeply and co-collaboratively across the college with what could we be doing with AI that we're not doing now. and bring those ideas forward in the fall. And one of the things we're going to be moving towards in the fall is an AI summit that's going to bring us together as a community to look at what's happening at the college already. And those five frameworks are really going to drive the AI summit so that people can see that we're not only using it as a framework, but we're carrying it over into how that work gets personalized, how it gets demonstrated, and with evidence that this is how it's impacted us. It's not about saying we're busy and that we're doing all these things. Let me check a box saying how busy I am. No, it's I'm busy, but here's the impact I made. I would rather us focus more on impact and outcomes than, celebrating busyness. That's one of the things that really I think we're moving towards, which I think, again, being a state institution, we want to demonstrate the ROI on the investments that the state and local county have made in us. And so we're really excited to seed, if you will, some of the ideas that I know are germinating across FCC right now. And we're going to give them a vehicle to do so.
Yeah. For that person who's also waiting at the stoplight again, we have to celebrate and not lose sight of the fact that your institution is actually putting real money behind this. And that's not just for the consultant. It is for the pilot projects too. When I speak at conferences on innovation, one of the things that I am constantly harping on is money matters, money talks. And if your team does not see certain things getting funded, then that innovation becomes episodic or it just becomes performative. And nothing can really happen without a budget oftentimes. And so the fact that there is not just a budget for the consultant herself, but for the phases of the project and for pilots to run and a community feel to all of that. I just think you guys are being incredibly thoughtful of how you are laying all of this out. I do, because I had a chance to see your RFQ, I know that your scope says things like tool agnostic and advisory, not operational. These are very loaded phrases in reality. So tell me more about why you're taking a tool agnostic approach and, something that is advisory, not operational.
Yeah, those are very intentional framing for us because of where we are in the college's maturity with technology. So I'll just take a step back, Mallory. As we do this work, Jerry and his team is also looking at enterprise-wide, I would say 150 to 200 pieces of technology that we use, systems, apps, all the things that may or may not be something that we move forward with, in the future. And so as we look at bringing someone in to help us with AI, we needed someone who would protect the institution from some preferred vendor that they had worked with in the past and would steer us towards that. We really wanted to focus on what we currently have and what might be the options later on. If we find an opportunity, then at least we've created that roadmap and continue to have that North Star in mind. And I think it preserves our procurement integrity to make sure that the roadmap reflects the college's situation and not a consultant coming in with already, a lens for a certain type of vendor that we would or could use. So that's the tool agnostic piece. As far as the advisory, that is really speaking to the thought partnership we were looking for and to really challenge us with hard-hitting questions and frames that would sharpen whatever roadmap we developed internally. It provides a clear role for the consultant coming in and knowing that they're going to provide that high level strategic thought partnership, because it allows us to, at the same time, Mallory, create the internal FCC AI capacity that we are measuring as the project continues. So concurrently, those two things are happening at the same time because we also need to think about the future as the work progresses and how we might move the work forward after FY27 into FY28, 29, and 30.
So I think there's a lot of leaders listening that are maybe exactly where you were 6 or 9 months ago. and they need to know how to do this work. And we have given them a great playbook over the last half hour. But if they're still not sure how to start or how to make the case upwards, what's one move that you'd tell them to make as, we're heading into these summer months? Like, what is something that they can focus on?
I would offer, Mallory, that folks should really look at aligning the internal conversation with existing work with AI before having any public-facing communication about directionality. And again, depending on the size of the institution, that's going to be more difficult than others. But as a mid-sized community college in Maryland, I think we're well positioned to have those enterprise level conversations because of our size. And I would want folks who have direct line of sight to AI tools, the impact to students, as well as to employees around that conversation. It usually starts at cabinet because that's the high level view that you would have. So I would say that's the one move I would focus on going into the summer, and asking yourself questions around, if there's a problem with AI, what are we trying to solve? And not just creating a problem to solve, but being there to leverage AI in ways that help that institution. Because I think folks are looking, they may be having that comparison moment, where you're like, well, that school's doing it. We should. And I would caution folks to take a breath and say, how is AI going to help us where we are at this moment in time for what we're trying to do to serve students and faculty and the community? Because you can get pulled into feeling like you're behind or feeling like you don't have what you need. And it's having those honest conversations about, well, where do we want to go, and finding a champion. I mean, right now, myself and Dr. DeSanto, we're championing this moving forward with the college. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I know that we're going to be doing some really excellent work over the next year. But I don't know if everyone has that champion on their campus. And I don't know. And a consultant in that case may be needing to be the champ. Like maybe that's where someone will bring in a consultant for a different scope of work because of where they're at as an organization and where they're at maturity wise for that level of work.
Yeah. And you said this, way back at the start of this episode, you and Jerry got lucky because you came in at roughly the same time. And so often I've done so much buyer research in our sector. Change in leadership at the top, it doesn't have to be the president, but at that cabinet level can often be the catalyst for getting momentum behind these types of activities. So if you're at an institution where some of that leadership change is happening, maybe there is an opportunity to utilize that and harness that power for good as well. Well, Ed, this was just so terrific. Thank you again for your time. I know this episode's dropping on Memorial Day, so if folks are, flipping burgers while they're listening, I would ask for one more thing, y'all. Please go to wherever you are listening to this podcast and click subscribe. A 5-star rating goes a really long way, and a comment goes even farther to helping this podcast continue to grow. I so appreciate you all and the opportunity to be in your earbuds every Monday morning. And Ed, it was just such a pleasure getting to chat with you today. Thank you so much. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up?
No, just thanks for the opportunity. And honestly, if folks want to continue the conversation or reach out, they can find me on all the things, LinkedIn, socials, whatever it is. Happy to connect and further have a conversation in any way I can, helping.
Amazing. All right, folks, we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Pulse. The show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.